coming on the air with deadly Hurricane Fiona, now on track to become a Category 4 storm, battering Turks and Caicos, with Puerto Rico under a state of emergency after its own pass from Fiona. You've got more than 1 million people with no power and warnings things could get worse before they get better. We're going to take you there live. And Team Trump, late today, getting told by a judge you can't have your cake and eat it, too, when it comes to the declassification of all those sensitive materials the former president have. What else we're learning from inside that Brooklyn court at a key hearing today. Plus, what investigators called the biggest COVID fraud scheme ever. How dozens of people stole more than 250 million taxpayer dollars meant for hungry kids to pay for fancy cars and beach houses. And you might be used to your usual trip to the dentist to check for cavities or to the doctor to check your blood pressure. But how about a routine screening for anxiety? Why one influential task force says we should all be doing exactly that. Plus, don't expect to see some of the biggest stars in the WNBA in Russia anytime soon. We'll tell you who's walking away from millions of dollars later on in the show. Hey, I'm Hallie, and right now it looks like Hurricane Fiona is getting even stronger, maybe about to become a Category 4 storm as it rips its way toward Bermuda. After blasting Turks and Caicos today, dangerous flooding there, you can see. The Dominican Republic under a state of emergency, and so is Puerto Rico. More than 1 million people there with no electricity, no clean water, after Fiona basically wiped out infrastructure on the island. And it may take days before things start to get better.
Most customers, I hope, will get their power back within days. How many days? That remains to be seen, but definitely not months.
Right now, the power is back on for some folks, but about 80% of people on the island are still in the dark. And think about what that means, right? No fridge, meaning your food spoils. There's no place to keep certain medications cold. There's no AC, even in this really hot and sticky weather there. All of it coming exactly 5 years to the day today after Hurricane Maria devastated the island, destroying Puerto Rico's power grid and leaving thousands of people with no power for months. Some didn't have power for a whole year back then. So, yeah, people are frustrated, of course, especially now when 2/3 of the country doesn't have access to water, no showers, can't cook. Of course, this water crisis is linked to the power outages. A lot of the water plants in Puerto Rico don't have generators, so they can't do anything. They can't operate when the electricity goes out. And as some people are finally able to get back to their homes to start cleaning up the damage, rescuers are still trying to help people if they can get to them between all the debris and the destruction. George Solis is in Ponce, Puerto Rico, with the latest on the damage there. And Bill Cairns will be with us in just a minute with the latest update coming in as we speak from the National Hurricane Center. So, George, let me start with you and what you're seeing on the ground.
Yeah, Hallie, the destruction is widespread. We can show you a little bit of what we've been seeing here on the ground as we've been surveying some of the wreckage here from the storm right here. You can see this road is closed. There is power lines. There is a power pole that is down there. No juice, of course, on the island right now, so that is not active. But you don't have to go far to see more damage. Take a look right over here. There is another power pole and more down power lines. And this is the frustration that a lot of people are encountering right now. Not just the destruction, but the fact that they don't have power. More than 1 million people right now without that power. And you talked about the heat. We've been experiencing that here on the ground. Now, imagine if you're in your home without a generator, no AC. This is brutal. And today of all days, right, the anniversary of Hurricane Maria, we were supposed to be talking about how much progress this island has made. Instead, we were talking about cleanup. We were talking about rebuild efforts yet again. This is insult to injury for so many who thought we were past this. We were going to do so much better with this storm. And instead, they are now waiting to see if what the government has said is true, that this is going to take days, not weeks, not months. People are tired. People are frustrated, and understandably so, because the devastation here is so catastrophic. Roads here are a mess. Right now, we have been driving through town. The street lights are out. And so people are wondering when that federal aid is going to get here to start assessing with some of the cleanup. Hallie?
You know, you said something that I think is really important here, that today, and like just to pull back the curtain, which we do, like we had been sending teams down, including you, including Gabe Gutierrez, to be able to report on the 5-year anniversary of Hurricane Maria, right? Like that was the initial thinking before Fiona hit. Well, now you're there reporting on, as you say, what should have been talking about sort of progress made since Maria and what still was left to be done with this layered on top, Fiona layered on top of everything people are dealing with from Maria. You're talking to folks about this very issue.
Yeah, that's right, Hallie. I talked to one gentleman who said his family hunkered down throughout the storm. They don't think they were adequately prepared for this. They still got some supplies, but I want you to listen to what he told me about weathering this storm. How do you guys feel? It's the anniversary of Hurricane Maria, and again, you have no power. This day brings familiar feelings. It's a bad memory. Here we are repeating history, in a sense, 5 years to the day, and again, the people here in Puerto Rico have no power. Yeah, Hallie, best case scenario, the power does come on in a few days, they hope, but we know that the recovery here is going to take months. Hallie?
George Solis, live for us on the ground in Puerto Rico. Thank you. Let me bring in now Bill Cairns. And Bill, I know you have scrambled to a monitor because we just now have an update on Hurricane Fiona. Talk to us about the track. You think she's still going to get to a Category 4?
There's a chance. If not strong Category 3, there's not much of a difference. Regardless, it's going to be a beast of a storm right to the upcoming weekend when it slams into the Canadian Maritimes. I mean, they could get a storm like they've never seen before. So let's talk about what we got from the Hurricane Center. So you can see the eye of the storm located right there, right near where the number 3 is. That's a major Category 3 hurricane. Winds are at 115. It's still moving pretty slowly. Winds are only at 8 miles per hour, and they had a heck of a day in the Turks and Caicos Islands. I mean, they had 100-mile-per-hour wind gusts. They have numerous areas that had some flash flooding problems, as you'd expect, and now it's slowly going to move away. The weather will be much improved tomorrow. That'll be their day to get out and take a look around to see how bad it was. Then the storm, the forecast path from the Hurricane Center up to a Category 4. They max it out about 140-mile-per-hour winds, and then look at this. It goes over the warm water. See this dark right here? The water is unusually warm in the North Atlantic right now. It's like an ocean heat wave. That's going to help maintain the strength of the storm. And yes, all the way up in between Halifax and St. John's, Nova Scotia, and Newfoundland, 100-mile-per-hour winds, gusts possibly up to 120 miles per hour. That's almost like never happened before. Back in 2003, Hurricane Juan hit Nova Scotia near Halifax. They had 110-mile-per-hour gusts. That's like the highest ever. But they could see that like widespread with this storm. This is going to be much bigger than that storm, Hallie. So, yeah, the climate change, ocean temperatures warmer, storms can be stronger, and in unusual places.
And the scary thing, too, and you're alluding to it, is the threat that's about to hit Puerto Rico, too. I mean, I think people are still bracing for what else is to come. I know it was sort of drizzly there today, which is not ideal, but it could get even worse.
Yeah, we hope that this next system is going to stay south of Puerto Rico. I mean, that's the majority. I mean, cross your fingers, right? I mean, they don't deserve anything like that. So this is the area of concern. You see Puerto Rico is here. There's Fiona. This is the area of concern. Hurricane Center says it has a 70% chance of developing. So it's a pretty good odds that we're going to have our next tropical depression or maybe tropical storm out of this. And Gustan is going to be the next name of the next storm, and Hermine is the name after that. And so as we watch it heading towards the Caribbean, extremely warm water, some of the warmest on the planet, that's the general direction it's headed. And once you get in the Caribbean, it's almost impossible for a storm to escape without hitting a land area. Here's what our computers are thinking. A few of them take it over here towards Nicaragua and Honduras, possibly Belize or in Mexico. A couple make that turn towards Jamaica, up towards Cuba, and possibly towards the Gulf of Mexico. That's why, Hallie, this is going to be the storm to watch as we go throughout next week. This week it looks okay away from land areas, but next week, heads up for everyone in the Gulf of Mexico.
And I know you'll be watching it. Bill Cairns, thank you. To politics now, because that special master, that independent third party, looking at all those documents taken from the former president's home in Mar-a-Lago, well, he's telling lawyers for the former president today, during a key prelim hearing, that if they are not going to tell him which documents are or are not classified, he's just going to say they're all classified. He said out loud in court, you can't have your cake and eat it too. He's basically telling them, if you are not going to sort of bite the bullet and say the former president declassified these documents, I can't do it for you. The hearing comes after Deary apparently proposed that Mr. Trump's team submit information as to which documents the former president says he has declassified, to which his team said, we don't think it's necessary to do that yet, saying they got to keep that close to the chest if they end up challenging the search warrant or use it as a defense later on. They're sort of acknowledging the possibility that the former president could be indicted. Let me bring in Tom Winter now. And Tom, let me break this down into a couple of what I think are key headlines. And let me start with this line about you can't have your cake and eat it too. This is what the judge is talking about. Right. The former president and his allies repeatedly in public have said, the documents they found at Mar-a-Lago that said classified, nothing's wrong because the former president declassified them before leaving office. Okay. Other officials have come out and said that's not true, right? And the former president's team has not made that claim where it counts, in court. And this is the issue that Judge Deary was taking up.
It only matters in court, Hallie. I think that's the important thing for people to understand. So basically, when you have a case like this, you can say almost whatever you want outside of court. Sometimes those statements could be damaging to you. But in this particular instance, what the judge is looking for is saying, look, you guys want to talk about classified document issues? You want me to consider that in my special master review? I'm the judiciary. I'm just the referee here. I'm not going to be the one that's going to determine whether federal prosecutors are telling the truth about documents that they say are classified. As a matter of fact, I'm not going to pay attention really to that at all. If you all want to come forward and make statements that seem to indicate that these documents are, in fact, declassified, you're free to do that on your own, and I'm free to weigh those issues and to take a look at them. But as far as I'm concerned, I may not even have to look at those documents. I think that's the surprising thing from the judge today. He says it's more of a need-to-know type level of classification. Prosecutors say they're so classified that even they haven't had a chance to review them all. So, again, this is an issue that Trump is saying publicly, but in court is one that they're really shying away from as far as putting their flag in the ground.
And they've had opportunities to do it. Talk to us then about the timeline here, Tom, because that had been one of the key questions. What happens next? And is the DOJ concerned that all this special master stuff is going to delay the investigation into what is at the heart of all this, which is, did the former president improperly take this material to his home, and then what did he do with it?
Yeah, and I think that's an important thing for us to consider, is that now this review appears that it's going to be done within the next couple of weeks. We might even get these documents all looked at and back to federal prosecutors and completely litigated out before Thanksgiving. But earlier we had thought that it would be maybe a week after Thanksgiving. So this is moving along, I think, at a more rapid clip. And unless, and of course, there's huge caveats over all of this, because the judge who the special master works for essentially here could make their own determinations. Of course, the appeals court is hearing a challenge from the Justice Department to parts of this entire review. So things could change. But I think that the process here has now speeded up dramatically. And of course, the ultimate asterisk to all of this, Hallie, is it might not even matter, because the charges that the Justice Department said in the search warrant that they're considering don't have anything to do with whether or not the documents are classified. And I think that's an important thing for us to remember going forward. Bottom line here, this could be a big fight over nothing and maybe just a speed bump in the route to the conclusion of this investigation, which, of course, could include an indictment.
Yeah, you're talking about as far as the relevancy to the matter at hand criminally here. Tom Winter, thank you. It's good to see you. Thanks for staying on top of all those developments today. The fight over relocating migrants from border states may end up in President Biden's home state of Delaware at some point tonight, with some reporting out there that Florida Governor Ron DeSantis may be flying people there. You've got officials in Delaware. They're out there at the airport ready just in case, even though they say they don't know when or if that's going to happen. President Biden asked about it this afternoon.
It looks like he's sending migrants to Delaware. Do you have any comment or response to that, sir?
He should come visit. We have a beautiful shoreline.
Governor DeSantis telling reporters today he cannot confirm any reports that he may be sending migrants to Delaware. And it all comes as we're finding out, right as we were coming on the air, that DeSantis is facing a class action lawsuit for sending dozens of migrants from Texas to Florida, then to Martha's Vineyard. You remember when that happened? That was a big news story just within the last few days here. A Texas sheriff says he's opening a criminal investigation in that, too. He says migrants were lured to Martha's Vineyard under false pretenses. Carrie Sanders is joining us now. Carrie, talk to me about headline number one, which is this lawsuit, class action lawsuit. We're just finding out new details about as we're coming on the air. What's up with it?
I just read through it, Hallie. It was filed earlier today in the U.S. District Court in Massachusetts, filed by Alliance Americas. That's the Alliance of Americas, a group that represents migrants on behalf of several what lawyers often call John Does and Jane Does. In this particular case, filing the lawsuit against Ron DeSantis for taking those 48 Venezuelan migrants from Texas, landing in Florida, and then eventually depositing them in Martha's Vineyard. Now, the lawsuit says that they, we'll just read a little bit of it, which is the migrants have suffered harms, the redress which is a minimum of exceeds $75,000. So there's a price tag on what they're already seeking. They claim that the migrants have suffered harms, violations of their 4th and 14th Amendments illegal seizure, false arrest, and then this one, which is a claim of false imprisonment by confining individual plaintiffs, that's the migrants, in the aircraft as that flight went to Martha's Vineyard. It's unclear whether Massachusetts and the federal judges there will even determine that there is standing, but the lawsuit filed just a short time ago, we've reached out to Governor Ron DeSantis' office for a response, but so far have heard nothing, Hallie.
So, and they have been on defense on this and defending the governor's actions. I want to get to that in a second. But let me ask you about sort of this two-track thing of these planes of migrants heading to certain locations. We know that one had been sent to Martha's Vineyard, Texas to Florida to Martha's Vineyard. That was the path. There is now a criminal investigation that's been opened by somebody, a sheriff in Texas, on that. There's also this issue of a plane of migrants that could maybe be landing in Delaware, although we're finding out from our team on the ground there, they're like tracking the flight info. Where is it going? Maybe this plane is landing in Teterboro, New Jersey. We don't even know who's on the plane. Like, there's a lot of question marks on the Delaware piece of it. The bottom line, though, is that the governor's office is on defense as it relates to the potential for a criminal investigation. And as you point out now, this civil litigation, too.
Yes, and so the governor held a news conference today, Governor Ron DeSantis. He did not respond to the Javier Salazar, who is the sheriff in Bexar County in Texas, who says that he is investigating whether there should be criminal charges or not. But he's very forceful in saying that he believes that these migrants were lured and lied to get on the plane.
The reports are Maduro is releasing people from his prisons and sending them up to the southern border. And you know, these leftist dictators have done that in the past. So you're bringing in people, they're coming right across the border, and then they're going in the interior of the country. That's not going to be good for safety in our communities. I mean, that's going to be a big problem.
And that is very much an unconfirmed statement about these reports that some of the Venezuelan migrants are leaving or being let out of prisons. As a matter of fact, we reached out to the foreign minister in Venezuela, who said it's not only absurd, but it's just designed to justify Governor DeSantis' actions regarding Venezuelan migrants. And if you note, and Hallie, I know you more than anybody do, this is very similar to what we heard
I was just about to say that, Carrie.
then soon-to-be candidate President Trump said at the time about Mexicans when he talked about them coming to the United States. And he says they're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people. So all of this seems to be following sort of that blueprint there, Hallie.
Carrie Sanders. Carrie, thank you so much for that. Appreciate it. So, to what officials are calling now the biggest COVID fraud scheme in the history of the country. $250 million, $250 million. The Justice Department says that's how much was stolen today. A huge amount, and making it potentially kind of worse, the money that was allegedly stolen here was supposed to be used to feed hungry kids in Minnesota. We're talking about a group of charities, restaurants, and individuals who claimed they were giving meals to tens of thousands of kids, but no, the money instead was going to luxury cars, fancy houses, property on the beach in Kenya. 47 people are now facing charges. And prosecutors say the ringleader was Amy Bach, who ran a nonprofit called Feeding Our Future. She's denied wrongdoing. But to give you a sense of the scale of this, FBI affidavits say one local restaurant collected more than $1 million in a single month. Typical McDonald's takes in something like $3 million in a year. Maggie Vespa is joining us now. And Maggie, you know, this was a big deal, right? This was announced today. Big deal, big fraud. It's federally funded, right? It's a federally funded program. So that means it's like, if you're watching this and you live in America and you pay taxes, it's your money that was stolen. Tell us about the timeline 100%. Of this investigation and the sort of finale, if you will, at this moment as far as this announcement.
Definitely. I mean, this was going on, frankly, for years. And it started right with the start of the pandemic, investigators say, March 2020, because they note at that time, obviously, need was skyrocketing. Suddenly people couldn't work. Kids had to be home from school. Maybe their parents, you know, had worked when they were at school prior. And the need skyrocketed. And one thing that happened as a result is that the feds loosened restrictions around this kind of money to get it out the door to needy families, hungry kids, faster. And that's what they say this group, Amy Bach being the ringleader, investigators say, basically took advantage of, and going as far as to provide fake documentation with fake names of kids they say they were feeding, fake ages, setting up LLCs to launder this money, again, going on for years. And then this investigation got underway about a year and a half ago, and we're seeing the results of that today. Take a listen to more of what we heard in that press conference earlier today.
As alleged in these indictments, over a short period of time, these 47 defendants engaged in a brazen scheme of staggering proportions.
Again, a lot of the charges that we're hearing from against these 47 defendants now, a staggering number, include money laundering, wire fraud, and conspiracy. Hallie.
What else do we know about the folks behind this scheme? Because one of the people accused says he fed 5,000 kids in a day. Others used, like, fake programs to make up ages for kids who they were supposedly feeding but ultimately were not, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, definitely. So it's crazy to hear the details that investigators put into this, that they say that these people utilized. And one of them saying that they used a website called listofrandomnames.com, aptly named, and it's now been taken down, by the way. If you're looking for it, you're not going to see it. They also put the names into an Excel spreadsheet to have it randomly assign ages, but that's kind of where a lot of this went wrong. Investigators also say they caught these people through a number of ways, one of them being the Excel spreadsheet would often screw up and accidentally, as they reported these, meals being doled out multiple times, change the ages of the same kids. So like little Tommy Jones is 12, and then he's 16 the next month, and then he's 8, and then he's 17. So they noticed that. They also compared the names to local school rosters and found out that less than 2% of the kids these people claimed to be feeding were actually registered at local schools, a.k.a. they didn't exist.
Right.
Hallie.
They were just made up. Maggie Vespa, thank you for your reporting on that big story. Appreciate it. President Biden, as we speak now, heading to New York for the United Nations General Assembly, which has kicked off today. The president set to speak tomorrow. And you know what the big focus is going to be, right? When you think international geopolitical story, right now it's Ukraine. Okay, the president wants to rally allies. He wants to push for more military support for Ukraine. Over 150 world leaders will speak, except for Russian President Vladimir Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping. Sitting this one out. It comes as Russian-occupied territories of Donetsk, Luhansk, and Kherson have officially put sham referendums on their calendars for Friday, basically forcing these places in Ukraine to become part of Russia. It's not a good thing, and it's something that U.S. officials had been bracing for. We know there were warnings even back in July that the Kremlin had been taking steps toward basically stealing, annexing some of these occupied parts of Ukraine, places that their military had taken over. Megan Fitzgerald is joining us now. And Megan, when we look ahead to President Biden's speech tomorrow, a really important moment on the world stage, he is expected to keep up the pressure on the Kremlin with the rest of the world watching.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Ukraine, of course, is going to be paying close attention to this speech. What they want to hear here is, of course, President Biden once again voicing his support for Ukraine. They're always going to be wanting more humanitarian aid, more military aid, because what we're seeing, as you and I have been talking about for weeks now, is this lightning fast counteroffensive that they're launching, just sweeping past the Russian front lines. But to do so, of course, they're burning through their weapons, their munitions or ammunitions for their guns. So they're going to need this steady stream of weapons coming into the country to ultimately reach this victory that they're fighting for, Hallie.
As far as what's happening on the ground in Ukraine, you've got this sham referendum thing that is coming up, we think, in just a few days. The Ukrainians are saying this is a sign of desperation by Russia, given that Ukraine has had some success on the battlefield recently. They're saying anybody involved is going to face criminal proceedings. This feels a little like deja vu to what happened when Russia took over Crimea back in 2014.
Yeah, absolutely. Similar situation. This sham referendum where, Russians are going to be allowing the citizens to vote on if they want to be a part of Russia or not. Of course, the U.S. is going to say and is saying that they're going to fix those results. A new poll out by the Kyiv Institute, saying that 95% of Ukrainians want to be a part of Ukraine. So we already know what's going to happen here. We've seen it, as you mentioned, in Crimea. The difference is that there's a full-blown war happening right now. Ukrainians saying, look, referendum or not, they plan on taking back as much territory of Ukraine as they possibly can, specifically heading into these cold winter months. Hallie.
We're also seeing, I know you visited a city just in the east that was liberated. Talk about, and you've alluded to some of it here, but more about what you're hearing from people and what life is like.
Hallie, to be frank, I mean, these people say that they were just living in hell. Locked in their homes, scared to go outside because they feared that they would be killed by the Russians. So you imagine they're scrounging for food. They're relying only on what they have in their backyard gardens, what they have in their house. People deprived of medication, just living in this perpetual state of fear. So now that they've been liberated, they're starting to come out of their homes. They're looking for the things that they've desperately needed, like medication. We had a chance to speak with the Doctors Without Borders that were there trying to pass out medication. Long lines of people coming from all over the town, hoping to get what they needed. I want you to listen to what this woman had to tell us.
These people are very traumatized.
What are you seeing?
People in need of access to healthcare, access to water, access to food. They've been deprived of basic human rights for a long time.
And so I asked this lady, how did these people survive? You know, there was elderly people in line, and she said, you know, we're talking about a resilient group of people who did everything they could to try and survive. And some of them did, Hallie, and as you know, unfortunately, we were finding out by the hundreds that a lot of people didn't.
How many did not? Megan Fitzgerald live for us there in Ukraine. Megan, thank you for your reporting on the ground. In Iran, you saw more and more angry protests in the streets there today over the death of Mahsa Amini, a young woman in the custody of Iran's morality police. That's the group that enforces rules, making women cover their hair, wear loose-fitting clothes in public. 5 people have been killed. And I want you to take a look at some of the scenes that we're seeing. Thousands of Iranians on the streets, on cars. You had, look at that, water cannons right there from security forces firing them off. Police say Amini died Friday after slipping into a coma, but her family says she had no prior health issues. She was just 22 years old. Coming up, here in the U.S., stocks dropping today ahead of a big Fed decision tomorrow. We'll talk about what investors are so concerned about. Plus, the FDA's new warning about cooking chicken in NyQuil. You will not be surprised to hear it's a TikTok thing. We're going to explain that coming up in the 5 things. Stocks dropping today with investigators kind of in wait-and-see mode about what the Federal Reserve will do tomorrow, big day on interest rates. You have the Dow, the S&P, the NASDAQ, all down about a percentage point, right? So it's not like huge, scary stuff, but it is an indication of how investors are feeling. And here's why. The Fed is kicking off this 2-day meeting today. Tomorrow, they're expected to drop an interest rate hike, with the Fed trying to fight against some of the highest inflation we've seen since the 1980s. You can see rates go up by another 0.75% at a time when, listen, everything already feels more expensive. I want to bring in CNBC's Seema Modi. So 5th rate hike of the year. It feels like we have been through this because we have 4 other times, right? We know how this is going to go. Jay Powell is going to come out. He's going to do this news conference. The markets will react. Setting aside what the investors will do, setting aside what, like, stock traders, you know, will do, the average person, what should we expect?
Well, Hallie, the Fed is expected to raise rates by 75 basis points at its meeting tomorrow. Estimates had been raised from 50 to 75 over the past week after that August inflation print came in hotter than fears, suggesting inflation here in America has not improved. It has not peaked, and that is really emboldening the Fed to be more aggressive. That's the fear, at least. We spoke to Nomura's top economist, Rob Dent, in the 2 p.m. hour. He says the tight jobs market is also worrying Chair Jerome Powell, and that the Fed doesn't want to see hiring cool down. So there are different metrics that the Fed is using to gauge how hot inflation is. It's not just the CPI print, it's the jobs market as well, Hallie.
Seema Modi from CNBC, thank you. I'm sure we'll be talking again tomorrow, being a big day for the Fed. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, Republican attorneys general are reportedly warning Visa, MasterCard, and American Express not to start categorizing sales from gun shops. This is according to the Wall Street Journal. You'll remember we told you credit card companies want to add a special code for firearm sales. It'll help them track things better, could help, they hope, stop mass shootings. The Journal reports the attorneys general wrote a letter to the company saying the plan could lead to the misuse of consumer data. Number 2, NyQuil chicken is apparently a thing on TikTok. And if you weren't already completely disgusted by the videos that we just showed, the FDA is telling you do not do this, right? The FDA is out with this new warning against exactly what you think it is, chicken cooked in NyQuil. The FDA says it could make somebody accidentally take a dangerously high dose of NyQuil without realizing it, because obviously when you boil something, it's going to make it more concentrated. It could also change the way it works. If you inhale those NyQuil vapors while you're cooking, it could also hurt your lungs. So, like, don't. Number 3, the newest military branch, the U.S. Space Force, is out with its official Space Force song. It is called Semper Supra, named after the Space Force motto, which is Latin for always above. Number 4, you're going to be able to watch the Golden Globes again on NBC next year. The network, the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, and Dick Clark Productions say they've come to an agreement only for a year, though. Remember, the show was off the air last year because there were major issues, a lot of media reporting on this, to the lack of diversity inside the group, other ethical concerns as well. The organization says it has since added more than 100 new voters to the Press Association ranks. We'll see how it goes this year. Number 5, Vice President Kamala Harris was in South Carolina today visiting 2 HBCUs and pushing for more people to register to vote. Timely, given today is National Voter Registration Day. Election Day is in just 7 weeks, and if you want to find out more about the rules in your area, head to NBCnews.com/planyourvote, or screen grab the QR code if you're watching on your phone or your tablet. Take a picture of it. It'll take you right to the site. You can get specific information on rules, deadlines, etc., where you live. When we come back, we've got new video now showing some of what went down inside a Georgia elections office the same day a voting system was allegedly breached. That's the video. We're going to explain it in a minute. Plus, a new move by Democrats to try and stop another January 6th. What they're doing after the break. In Georgia, new surveillance video obtained by NBC News is taking us inside a small county's elections office for the first time on the day a voting system was allegedly breached back in January 2021. Let me explain to you what you're seeing here. Do you see the woman in the blue cardigan? That's Kathy Latham. At the time, she was the county's Republican chairwoman. People with her, right? So you see these other people filing in. They're members of a computer tech firm who were hired by a lawyer aligned with Donald Trump. And according to this video, those people spent 8 hours inside that office, near voter data, etc. I'm going to show you the next shot here. It looks like they're handling some of the county's poll pads. Do you know what that is? That's like stuff that has voter info on it. The tech firm has denied allegedly breaching voter equipment. And this video also contradicts some of Latham's testimony. Blaine Alexander is in Atlanta. During her deposition in court, she said she'd only briefly stopped by the office that day. Now, I think a representative of hers is telling the Washington Post she can't be faulted for not accurately remembering the actions of that day. I think bigger picture, the key thing of why this matters, right, is that this could play into that Fulton County investigation into the push to overturn the legitimate election.
That's absolutely right. So let's start with this video and really kind of why we're underscoring it so much. It really just kind of throws water on the testimony that she made, that she just briefly stopped into the elections office after she finished teaching school that day. But the video shows a different story. Now, her attorney is pushing back on this, saying in a statement to the Washington Post, essentially, that this was an innocent oversight. He says that, listen, just because she failed to accurately remember the details of events from almost 2 years ago does not mean that she is lying. Now, I've reached out to her attorney a number of times, haven't spoken with him or gotten our calls returned directly, but he's also defending her in this latest court filing. But when you kind of look at the way that this surveillance video is used by the plaintiffs here, they almost do about a dozen or so pages, Hallie, where they show what she said under oath and then put it up against screenshots that show a completely different story.
When you look at this, Blaine, you've done so much reporting on this. How do you, for the casual viewer who maybe isn't following every in and out, what's the biggest takeaway we should have here? Is it that this is a smoking gun, or is it that this is just an additional piece of evidence as part of this investigation?
Well, I think it's certainly safe to say that this is something that the Fulton County District Attorney here in Atlanta is going to be looking into and is going to be very interested in. We already know that Kathy Latham fits into this investigation because she's one of Georgia's 16 alternate electors, or so-called fake electors, and they've already been notified that they're targets of the election. So that's one bucket of this, Hallie. The other bucket is that the DA here in Atlanta has made it very clear that she's interested in the goings-on in Coffee County as relates to the 2020 election. In fact, she's already notified Sidney Powell, a Trump attorney, attorney that she plans to ask questions about that very thing when Powell appears before a Fulton County grand jury in the coming days. So we certainly know that it's something that she's going to be interested in, going to be watching what comes from this. And by the way, these aren't coming to light because of the investigation. They're coming to light because of a completely different civil lawsuit around election security here in the state of Georgia. But it's something that is certainly going to be watched very closely in Fulton County. Hallie.
Blaine Alexander, live for us in Atlanta. Blaine, thank you. So today, late this afternoon, we found out the top House Republicans are telling the rest of their members to vote no tomorrow on a bill that would change the way, pretty much, that Congress certifies presidential elections. It's called the Election Reform Act, and it's trying to prevent another January 6th. This proposal would make clear that the vice president's role in counting votes is exactly that, to just count the votes. And if any member of Congress disagrees about that vote count, they'd have to have the support of a third of each chamber to object. Before, it was just one member from each chamber. Governors and states would also have to send electors to Congress before Election Day, which would prevent states from changing their rules after the results of the election came out. Now, the Senate also has a version of this bill, and Congresswoman Liz Cheney, who's leading the House side, says today she's optimistic there can be some agreement.
I think that there are a lot of similarities, and we'll see what happens, what comes out of their markup next week, and then look forward to continuing to work expeditiously to reconcile the two bills.
Joining us now is Sahil Kapoor. And so, Sahil, I want to impress upon people the point of this bill, right, this plan, would be to reform the Electoral Count Act in the hopes that it would stop something like January 6th from ever happening again, because it would clean up all the rules. There wouldn't be these questions, and there are no questions, but there wouldn't even be the possibility of the questions about what can a VP do, what's allowed under the Constitution, who can object, et cetera.
That's right, Hallie. Cleaning up is precisely the right word to use here. They're looking at an 1887 law called the Electoral Count Act, which, the genesis of this was some concern among Democrats in the run-up to January 6th that just in case, the Trump White House tried to pull something wild, if, Vice President Mike Pence pulled a different slate of electors out of his jacket pocket, what would they do? And they looked at that law, and they decided it was a total mess. And even before the January 6th attack, they thought it might need clarification, and that attack just drove this point home even further. So yes, there is a determination to clarify that law to prevent any future presidential candidate from trying to exploit it to win an election, or I should say win in quotes, to steal an election that they did not win. And there's a determination to get it done this year for the simple reason that right now it's Democrats who control the House and the Senate. They are determined to act on this front. And if hypothetically Republicans were to take control of the House of Representatives, it would be Kevin McCarthy, the likely speaker, who would have the ability to either hold a vote on a bill or to prevent any vote on this bill. He could throw the whole effort into the trash can, and there's nothing that proponents could do about it, even if it had the votes of majority of the House. And as you point out, Hallie, House Republican leaders, including McCarthy, are whipping their members to vote no. They don't want this bill to pass.
That's right. They're telling people vote no on this bill tomorrow. Let's say it goes in front of the Senate. Let me say this again. The Senate has at least, I think, 10 co-sponsors that are Republicans on that version of the bill, right? In other words, there is some indication that there are enough Republicans in the Senate who could support something like this, even if they've got to work out the details. Fair to say?
Exactly 10, in fact, Hallie. That Senate version of this bill, which is quite similar to the House bill, has 10 Republican co-sponsors. And the fact that these bills are structurally similar, there are more similarities than there are differences, has led to a lot of optimism in both the House and the Senate that they can ultimately get this over the finish line. Some of the differences are tangible but relatively minor. The House bill calls for a 1/3 threshold to force a vote on objections to counting electors. The Senate bill has a 1/5 standard. Senators I talked to are pretty committed to their 1/5 standard, but they'll be able to work that out. There are other things that the House bill does that Senate Republicans I've talked to in the last couple of days say they're a hard no on. That is most significantly creating a federal cause of action for aggrieved candidates to go to federal court to challenge electors if they think they've been wrongly, certified as the loser of that election. Senate Republicans prefer to keep that as a state issue, but there's also, and beyond that, there's some turf wars. There are, senators who want credit for this and aren't happy that the House is quickly moving on it. But if these are your biggest problems, Hallie, if these are the biggest problems that lawmakers have to getting a bill over the line, they're in pretty good shape to get this done.
Sahil Kapoor, live for us on Capitol Hill. Thank you, Sahil. Coming up, the FDA just today releasing its findings into the baby formula fiasco, the crisis that has been a huge problem for parents. what went wrong and how the agency plans to fix it next. NBC News covers hundreds of stories every day, and because you couldn't possibly read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. From our Midwest Bureau, at least 8 people were sent to Chicago hospitals today with things like burns or traumatic injuries after, do you see this, an explosion collapsed this 35-unit building. Fire officials say they don't know what caused this explosion yet, but the building's management called what happened, obviously, devastating. From our Northeast Bureau, federal officials in Rhode Island seized what they think is a record amount of meth-laced fake Adderall pills. How much? 660,000 pills. You know what the street value of that is? $4.5 million. The U.S. attorney there says a 27-year-old man has been charged and has agreed to plead guilty to possession with intent to distribute this. From our Southeast Bureau, get ready for this one because it is beyond a lot of people. Beyond Meat says it suspended its COO, Doug Ramsey, after he was arrested for allegedly biting somebody's nose in a parking garage after a football game. Officials say Ramsey accused the victim of bumping into his car, like bumping his car into his. According to the police report, Ramsey smashed that person's back windshield, then punched and bit him. Ramsey did not respond to a request for comment. Outdated systems and training at the FDA led to the baby formula crisis that affected millions of Americans, according to an FDA review that is just out this afternoon. Remember, back in February, we started reporting it was white hot at the time, this crisis on infant formula. The country's biggest manufacturing plant was shut down because of contamination issues. Huge shortage. Remember this? Empty store shelves. Parents were freaking out, scrambling to find a way to feed their babies. Stores were limiting how much people could buy. Now, the FDA is out with this report essentially saying, here's what we could have done better. Mike Memoli is joining us to break it down. So, Mem, what could they have done better, and what are they going to do to make sure this never happens again?
Well, Hallie, this report that we got today was based on more than 3 months of interviews with dozens of FDA senior leadership and some of the staff that were directly involved in this plant in Michigan, the investigation into it. And it really finds 15 different findings and recommendations from that work, some of which are really not surprising. You can put them into broad categories, including the fact that they needed better technology. That's going to be a common complaint in any bureaucracy at this point, that there needs to be increased understanding of the specific bacteria that was involved here. But I think some of the biggest headlines are going to revolve around what happened with what was a whistleblower complaint that really, in part because of technology, didn't reach the people it needed to fast enough. There was an issue that apparently the whistleblower involved here tried to send the message to FDA leadership, and they just never got it. So that was one of the findings from this report. You're also not going to be surprised, Hallie, that one of the findings from this FDA career official was that the agency needs more funding. They don't have the resources they need to kind of do this work, but also that while there is strong training for food safety in general, there was not enough, perhaps could be stronger training as it relates to baby infant formula specifically and dealing with that. Now, there are some fingers also being pointed elsewhere, including specifically at Abbott, the manufacturer, the person who operated, the company that operated this plant. This report found that the conditions observed there in Sturgis, Michigan were not consistent with, as this report puts it, a strong safety culture. And so that's obviously a finger pointed in that direction. But also, remember, this is a perfect storm. You have COVID involved as well. There were some shipping issues involved, getting samples to labs to be tested, and also just getting access to the facility itself because so many people were out sick. So a lot here, Hallie, to digest.
That is for sure. Mike Memoli, thank you very much. For the first time ever, an influential group of medical experts is telling all of us, rather, that if you're under 65, you should go get screened for anxiety just as a matter of routine. That's right. Just like you'd go to the dentist or the doctor, go get screened for anxiety because the signs go undetected for a lot of people. Some 40 million adults in this country are diagnosed with some kind of anxiety disorder every year. Only about 1 in 3 actually go get treatment. Now, this expert group's new report says it's making this big recommendation to help doctors diagnose early indications of anxiety. And listen, this is a big deal. This task force has a lot of influence. They're like docfluencers. The advice they give is not mandatory, but oftentimes it changes how other physicians practice medicine. Dr. Natalie Azar is joining us now. And Dr. Azar, if there's one thing that we have talked about a lot on the show, and there's a lot we talk about a lot, but it's the importance of mental health resources, right? I'm super transparent. I go to therapy. I love it. It's like going to the dentist for me. I always say, just go do it. Go see a therapist, if you can. just like you would go get your teeth checked. And this is like very much mirrors that. Go get screened for anxiety, even if you don't think you have it, just as a matter of routine.
Right. Yeah, and that's what's so interesting about this recommendation, Hallie, is that this is not for people who have symptoms of anxiety disorder or have an established diagnosis of a mental health illness. This would literally be, you know, you're seeing an 18, 19, up to 65-year-old patient in the office, and in addition to depression screening and alcohol and tobacco use and food insecurity, and you can see where I'm going with this because there's a long list of things that primary care doctors already screen for. But yes, this could ostensibly be added to an intake in the form of a questionnaire or scales. Now, you know, I think the most important thing to take home here, Hallie, is that this is a recommendation. This is clearly not a mandate. This is not what this United States Preventive Services Task Force does. It takes a look at evidence and it makes evidence-based recommendations. The open comment period until mid-October is going to be very interesting, Hallie. I think you're going to hear a little pushback from primary care docs who say they're already so overburdened in these 15-minute follow-up appointment slots that they may not be able to actually do this the way they would want to.
So it's so interesting because I could read between the lines, as you were saying now, right? There's so much they've got to screen for already. Can they really add this? But is it an indictment of the system, just writ large in this country, that because of these 15-minute windows, it is an added pressure on doctors potentially to have to screen for anxiety? In other words, shouldn't it be a kind of a no-brainer here that this should be able to get done, other than the systemic pressures that are put on the healthcare system?
Yeah, and Hallie, you definitely read right between the lines. I'm not a primary care doc, but the things that we need to do in our, 15 to 20-minute follow-ups can feel onerous at times, for sure. But I think one of the main reasons, if you have somebody sitting in the waiting room and they can fill it out, that's one thing. If you're taking time during the encounter, that gets a little bit more difficult. But I think one of the most important issues here are resources, really. The problem is not so much giving somebody a questionnaire to fill out and identifying someone who might benefit from therapy. It's about being able to refer that patient for said therapy. There's a significant shortage of mental health care providers in this country, and I think this might exacerbate that a little bit. And I feel like as a provider, you want to do the right thing by your patient, but you may not actually have sort of operationally a foundation or infrastructure to do anything about these questionnaires that you're going to be getting from your patients. That concerns me.
Dr. Natalie Azar, it's great perspective and great context. Thank you, as always. Good to see you. Still to come, some WNBA players say they're not playing on their Russian teams during this offseason because of Brittany Griner being held and, of course, the Ukraine invasion. And it's costing them a ton of money. We'll talk about where they plan to play instead and what they're saying publicly about it next. Some of the biggest stars in the WNBA say they will not be playing in Russia this year after, of course, the arrest of Brittany Griner there and Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And that decision is going to cost them a bunch of money. And listen, it wasn't just Griner who played in Russia. Nearly a dozen other WNBAers were also there last winter. None of them are going back this year, according to the AP, including all-stars like Breanna Stewart, Jonquel Jones, Courtney Vandersloot, who made millions playing in Russia. They're going to take their talents elsewhere. They told the AP it's hard for anybody to think it's safe to go there right now. And remember why some of these players had gone to Moscow in the first place. They could make 4 to 5 times more than what they make in the WNBA, with some pulling in more than $1 million a year. Steve Patterson is joining us now. And Steve, it is very clear, right? Like, of course, Brittany Griner is still imprisoned in Russia. The U.S. says she is still being wrongfully held there. Of course, as an American, you're not going to go back there and play. The State Department doesn't want Americans to even be there in the first place for this kind of thing. So in some ways, it seems very clear that they would make this choice. But there is a penalty for that still, and it comes in the financial realm.
It's a huge penalty because of what you just put on the screen. They can make way more money in Russia than just about anywhere else. But I would say on the other side of the coin, the other argument is that it's more maybe about the boycott, about the way Griner was treated, and less about them feeling unsafe. Because you have to listen to the way that they describe it being in Russia. A lot of them really take pains to separate, the way that the government operates, the way that the politics are there, from the people of Russia. A lot of them say that they actually enjoyed the people. They enjoyed the fans. They felt like the teams treated them very well. And they felt like, that they could be there and thrive there. But of course, if you're a little more cynical, you could also say that, well, they liked the money there. So it's hard to imagine that if there is, a safe release of Griner, that these players will stay away from Russia forever just because of what's on offer, when they travel and play there. Hallie.
You make such an important point, though, about this kind of boycott for BG, if you will, because she has motivated not just WNBA athletes, but athletes across the sports spectrum to support Brittany Griner, to try to get her out, bring BG home. That has been such a rallying cry. And I know that this is part of that, right? They're, of course, not going to go to Russia because they want to bring attention to Brittany Griner's detention there that remains.
Yeah, and it's amazing to do that. When you think about, listen to this, right? So the basement salary for the NBA, where the men play, the league minimum for like a rookie coming in that rides the bench, that has no brand, is over like $900,000. Compare that to what you're seeing on the screen there, and tell me that these women don't want to travel and play somewhere else that offers them more. And more also not only in pay, base pay, but a lot of times in amenities, because look, there is no league minimum in Russia. There's no collective bargaining in Russia. A lot of these teams, frankly, are owned by these Russian oligarchs that don't care. They just want to win. They don't care about the balance sheet. So it's a really big boon for some of these women to go when they're not being paid for who they are in the United States. One player said that basically she has to go to a communist country to get paid like a capitalist, which is just ridiculous to so many people that hear this. But to be willing to put that aside to say that, we're standing up for our friend, I think that's big. Hallie.
Steve Patterson, live for us on that. Steve, thank you. Great reporting as always. And that does it for us for this hour. We'll have more for you here tomorrow, same time, same place. Coverage picks up right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.